the Fray. The 7 deadly sins. They're not in the Bible, but they are part of early Christian philosophy. They started off with a monk named Evagrius Ponticus. People had cooler names back then. I think we can all agree on that. And he lived in the 4th century, and he cooked up an idea called the 8 evil thoughts. Gluttony, lust, greed, wrath, sloth. It can also be pronounced sloth, but I'm going to say sloth. Sadness, vainglory, and pride. In the 6th century, Pope Gregory I condensed and refined the list down to 7 deadly sins. He decided 7 is a better number for Christianity. You know, 7 is tied to a lot of Christian crap. Christian numerology really has a big boner for 7. So he added envy into the mix. He decided to merge sadness into sloth, boom, and merge vainglory into pride, since they're basically the same goddamn thing anyway. And we ended up with gluttony, lust, greed, wrath, sloth, envy, pride, 7 deadly sins. In the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas actually cooked up a list of 7 virtues to oppose the 7 deadly sins. And his list is temperance, chastity, generosity, patience, diligence, kindness, and humility. It's very interesting to hear the vibe difference, isn't it, right? The sins are all these guttural sounding words, right? Only 2 of them are even polysyllabic, gluttony and envy. The rest are single syllable words: lust, greed, wrath, sloth, pride. Of course, that's not true in the original Latin, but it is an interesting feature of the English version, at least. The sins all feel very guttural. The virtues feel a lot loftier, yes. But that's just an interesting little digression. What I'm here today to do is rank the sins, because of course I don't really see them as sins. I see them as natural and normal parts of human nature that we have absolutely no reason to be ashamed of. Now, anything taken to excess can be bad, of course. Even the supposed virtues taken to extreme could be some nasty things. Like, think about it. Too much temperance and you're a joyless ascetic, denying yourself every pleasure. Too much chastity and you're repressed, fearful of intimacy, and fearful of the richness of desire. Not to mention, if everyone was chaste, there'd be no human race. But I don't know, maybe that would be a good thing. Too much generosity, you kind of become like a doormat, bleeding yourself dry for others who may not deserve it. Too much patience, you let the whole world trample on you. Too much diligence, you work yourself into an early grave. Too much kindness, you become a fool, unable to see that there are instances when a little bit of cruelty is warranted. Too much humility, and you basically diminish yourself into nothingness. So, let's not pretend the virtues are purely good and the sins are purely bad. Instead, let's embrace the sins for what they really are. Just primal, powerful forces of human nature. And let's rank them, not by moral condemnation, but by how badass, how interesting, how enjoyable, or how useful they are in a world that thrives on just a little kiss of chaos. So coming in at number 7 is envy. Envy, I think, is the pettiest of the sins. It's jealousy without action, a quiet, simmering resentment that just kind of eats away at you. It doesn't empower, it just sort of festers. Like, at least greed pushes you to go out and take what you want. Envy just makes you miserable over what others have. Now, sure, envy can be a little bit of a driver of ambition, but it's still the least fun of the sins. I mean, nobody really likes feeling envious. Nobody celebrates it. It's just an ugly, nagging itch in the back of your mind. So, weakest sin, bottom of the list. Number 6. Sloth. Now, sloth has its appeal. I mean, laziness can be a virtue, especially in a world obsessed with productivity. But let's be real, sloth isn't exactly exciting. It's the sin of just not doing stuff, and where's the fun in that? I mean, sometimes it can be fun when you've done too much shit and you just need a fucking break from it all. But at its best, it's just the ability to enjoy a little bit of stillness, reject the hustle culture, embrace the art of just, yeah. But taken too far, it leads to stagnation, apathy, and decay. Sloth isn't destructive, it's passive, which makes it less interesting than some of the more, active sins. Number 5 is gluttony. Now, obviously, I've indulged in a little bit of gluttony in my day. Gluttony is about indulgence. It's about taking pleasure to the excess, about rolling around in the sheer delight of sensation. Food, drink, pleasure. Gluttony just says, more, more, more. And honestly, that's relatable. Life should be enjoyed. It lacks the ambition of greed or the passion of lust or the fire of wrath, but gluttony, is still a pretty cool sin. It's a personal sin. It doesn't change the world, it just gorges on it. And eventually, the excess might dull the senses a little bit. It's a great sin, but it's not an all-timer. It doesn't belong in the top echelon of sins or anything. Coming in at number 4 is wrath. Wrath is righteous fury, burning passion, raw power. It's destruction, but it's destruction with a purpose, or at least it can be with a purpose. Wrath is what starts the revolution. Wrath refuses to be trampled. It's the sin for all those people who just say, I ain't gonna stand for this shit. Unlike sloth, wrath is active. It demands action, retaliation, a reckoning. Unlike envy, wrath doesn't stew in resentment, it just erupts. And it can be dangerous, sure, but that danger is exactly what makes it so compelling. And of course, it kind of feels good, baby. Still, wrath is a double-edged sword. It can lead to great justice, but it can also lead to mindless destruction. A moment of unchecked rage can just burn everything to the ground, even the things you love. And that's why it doesn't crack the top 3 for me. It's powerful, but it's also probably the most volatile. Coming in at number 3 is greed. Greed is about hunger incarnate. Not the same way gluttony is. It's about money, but it's also about a little more than money. It's about power, success, influence. Greed doesn't sit around wishing. It just takes shit. Every empire, every innovation, every great fortune was built on somebody's greed. Of course, greed can also be monstrous. It can consume, hoard, and exploit. But when harnessed, greed can be ambition, and ambition is what changes the world. A little greed is the difference between greatness and mediocrity, if you really think about it. Number 2 is lust. Lust is just desire in its purest form, The pulse quickening, the breath being stolen out of your lungs, feels like there's fire in your damn blood. It's yearning. It's that feeling that just drives people to create, to destroy, to conquer, to seduce, to dream. Lust is at the heart of so much of what human beings do. Lust is why we write poetry, why we paint, why we sing, why we pursue beauty, why we crave connection. Lust is not just about sex, it's about passion. It's about embracing what it means to be fully alive. It's about wanting something so deeply that you chase it without hesitation. Lust is the most intoxicating of the sins, the one that sells everything, the one that tempts even the most pious. The only reason it's not number 1 is because there is still one sin that's even greater, one sin that I think is at the root of all the others, and that sin is number 1, pride. Pride is the original sin, and also the greatest. Pride is self-belief, self-creation, self-deification. It's the refusal to bow, the refusal to be small, the declaration of, I am! Every great artist, every leader, every visionary, every revolution has been fueled by pride. The belief that I am capable, I am worthy, I am more. Without pride, you are nothing. The church feared pride the most because it's the sin that makes gods out of men. And that is why pride, in my book, is the king of the sins. And just so we're clear, I don't think there's anything wrong with the stuff Thomas Aquinas held up as counter virtues. I think they're great and useful as counterbalances to the sins. They help us from going too far. Every sin does have a negative aspect after all. I think it's great to have a little humility to keep your pride from turning into delusion. I think it's great to have a little temperance to keep your gluttony from spiraling into self-destruction, a little patience to keep your wrath from turning you into a wrecking ball, a little diligence to keep your sloth from turning you into a pile of just like wasted potential. But the idea that these sins are inherently bad and that they should be resisted at all costs, to me, that's just fucking nonsense. These aren't sins. They're human nature. They're the raw forces that drive us forward, that push us toward ambition, pleasure, passion, power, creativity, and defiance. Suppress them entirely and you don't become virtuous, you become lifeless. The real key isn't rejecting them, but wielding them with wisdom, understanding them, controlling them without denying them. Because if history has shown us anything, it's that those who embrace their sins, not with reckless abandon, but with a sense of mastery, are the ones who really change the world. But maybe you disagree with me, or maybe you just disagree with my order. Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your order and your reasoning, and I want to thank you for watching, and I love you all, so please go in peace.
The only real sin is not liking this video. So give it a thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to this channel. Even if you're already subscribed, make sure you hit the alert bell so that YouTube tells you when this channel uploads new shit. Check the link in the description and keep kicking ass.